when we are dealing with the machine learning or maybe any thing modeling. So we have the some history data. So let's consider over here we have the our values for the sales. Sorry, this could be advertising. First is our advertising, our Y values, and another one is the sales. This is our X value. So we have this particular data set. So this is the known data set which we have. Let's consider we have this 80 data, 100 observe, like total we have the 100 observations. And over here, let's consider that we have the our sales data X over here. Let's consider 20 value, and we have this data set also over here. Let's consider this is our 20 observation. But if we want to check whatever the relation we have built is a good relation or it's not a good relation, so for that we need to keep some data aside out of that particular entire box. Let's consider the 20 observation I kept aside, and only on a 80 observation I'm gonna build a relation. So over here you can call it as also a history data. So using that particular data I'm going to build a relation between the X and Y. So based on that particular relation, we will try to find out how good our data set or maybe whatever relation we have built over here is how good that particular relation. So that particular relation we can test on an unseen data set, and for that we need to keep the some data set aside. So for that we do call it we do splitting of data set into the training and testing. Training data set is actually used to find the relationship. So for that you can call it as a training data, and testing dataset is used only to check whatever the relation we have built between the X and Y is good enough or not. So this is only used to test the relationship, and we do call it as a test data. So that's why there is a requirement of splitting the dataset into the training and testing. So if you want to split the dataset into the training and testing, we can simply use the sklearn. Sklearn is also another library which can help us like throughout the entire machine learning. You are gonna see that this sklearn library. So sklearn library is basically used for the splitting data, then selecting the model, then building the model, and then also calculating the some accuracy and other stuff. So for now, let's understand how exactly we can split our data set using the sklearn library. So sklearn library can give us the data set parts into the training and testing, and over here you can see that we have the data set X and Y. So in a X, we have the independent variables, and in our Y we have all our dependent variable. Dependent variables, the like variable of our interest. So we have the data set stored in this particular format. In X we have dependent variable, in Y we have dependent independent variable. And for the training and testing we do split this as a X train. You can call this as a this is the entire Y and entire X. For that you can call this as a X train. This is your Y train. Y is basically known to find the relation, but whenever we are using the test, at that time Y could be your unknown values that you are keeping some values aside. So that can be your X test, and this is your Y test. So you are just going to find, so this is the particular value over here. So this Y value you are just keeping aside. Like suppose you are playing the card games or something, and you just showing the some values, or maybe just playing the like whatever the randomly you pick up the value, what can be that value. So based on that particular entire survey you just keep the some values aside. Let's consider the king or maybe a queen. So these are the two values you keep aside, and you will just ask somebody or maybe some other person what can be this particular value. So suppose you just draw a first value as a king, and somebody else has predicted this particular value as a king. So Y test is nothing but the value which you have kept hidden, and the K is the person has predicted or maybe guessed that value. So for that you can call this as a Y predicted value, or maybe for that you can call this predicted value, that somebody has guessed that value. So it is a guessed value, and this is the hidden value. So you just have keep this hidden value. So for that you can call this as a white test, and based on the training data set, or maybe based on the relationship which you have built using the X train and Y train, you are just going to predict the Y pred values. So all the values over here, and you already have this 20 value hidden. So for that you can call this as a Y test. Then you are going to check whatever value my model has predicted is good enough or not using this hidden value. Then you are going to build the some relation between this Y test and Y predicted. It's simply, you already know that the X is our independent variable, Y is our dependent variable. So X train and X test. So X train, you can consider this as a this block. So for that, I already show that like this is the X train and this is the X test. So these are the like all the values related to our your dependent variable, and this Y test and Y train is all your value for the dependent variable. So you can consider the your Y test is your hidden value. So this is something that you are going to predict, and then you are going to check whatever you have predicted is correct, like is accurate or not. So this is the something that you are going to use furthermore, or maybe in future to test it. So if you want to split the data set, so you can define the test size any value. Like over here, let's consider I have splitted data into the 10, 80, 80 observation for the training data set, and 20 observation for the test data set. So you can also consider something like that rule over here as a only in a testing data set. I'm going to consider the 20% of data set for the test data and 80% data set for the training data set. So this is how you can split your data set. The shape over here, it will change something like that. 28 observation will be for the training X train. Similarly, for the Y train, you will see the same examples. For the X test, I just skipped some data set aside of this X test and Y test. So these particular observations are hidden. You can consider. So you are going to keep this hidden, and then you are just going to predict the some values based on this X test. And for that, you are going to call it as a Y prediction.